Good evening, Shortcuts. Stephen here. Just the one video this week, but hopefully one that you enjoy. So I just got back from a trip to Port Stevens, during which I acquired a collection of reggae, soul, and funk that certain records will make their way onto these videos in the coming days and weeks. But this is the video for, let's check, Wednesday, June 14th. Now, I was debating as to what my kickoff record could and should be. And there's a blues record in here that I thought hard about. But I'm going to go with this, something a little bit different. So those of you who've been watching my videos know that I tend to veer toward the very much on the Japanese vinyl side. I'm a big fan. Some US. I don't tend to have too many Aussie pressings. Well, that's about to change. I selected 3 records tonight that I think are the best. Certainly 2 out of the 3. The best Aussie vinyl I've ever heard. And the 2 that are great are mid-80s, which I think is interesting. I listened to a couple of podcasts over the last few years about the history of vinyl in Australia. You know, it's pretty checkered. There's no doubt that the pack 'em high and sell 'em cheap mentality for vinyl in the 70s in Australia was a challenge. I mean, poor quality vinyl, very high noise floor, very susceptible, very poor cardboard quality, often missing inserts and certainly lacking that love and attention that you get in Japanese, German, and in some cases US vinyl. But there's 2 here from the 80s that I think are the equal of pretty much anything I've ever heard. And in fact, I'm going to start here. The Triffids. Born Sandy Devotional. I heard this record when I was in university. I was a massive Midnight Oil fan. And I met an Aussie guy on a night out somewhere in the Golden Mile in Belfast. And he said, you should listen to the Triffids. I had never heard of them. And I got a copy on CD of Born Sandy Devotional. The music is as wide and spacious and serene as the beaches and, you know, fauna of Western Australia where this band originate. It seeps through everything they do. And it sounds, it's obviously of a place, but because the Triffids were surprisingly bigger in the UK than they were in Australia, this record charted higher in the UK than it did in Australia. Wide Open Road was a minor hit in the UK. It got into, I think it was 20s, maybe 27, 28. Australia, it really didn't. I don't even think it cracked the top 50. Somebody might tell me I'm wrong, but I remember just reading about this back in the day. So it was recorded by Gil Norton, who had worked, primarily up until that time, contemporaneously it would be with the likes of Echo and the Bunnymen. And I think you can hear a little bit of that echo, that space. But I think Dave McComb he's a better songwriter than anyone in Echo and the Bunnymen. I put this record up against any Aussie record. It turns out I've got 2 copies, 2 Aussie first presses on my shelf. I don't need 2. This copy's lovely. It's a VG Plus sleeve. The inner is great. And the vinyl is fantastic. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. And it's a wonderful copy. this other record, it surprised me how good the vinyl is. I wasn't expecting it. I one of my grails for years was to get a Japanese version of this, and I have one now. And if you put them on and blindfolded me, I would not be able to pick which is the Japanese and which is the Aussie first press of this. Rain Dogs, Tom Waits. I've discussed this record with a few of my Aussie vinyl mates. I mean, how does this sound so good? And there's talk of the cutter and the engineer and the quality of the vinyl. Either way, this record is utterly magnificent. And it is not accessible, and it's not inaccessible. It's not, it doesn't sound like classic rock, but it is a classic. It's a complete enigma, and that's part of why I love it to bits. I was reading, I've listened to this record hundreds of times. One of the things that occurred to me last time I was listening to it was the preponderance of marimba, which is not really a rock and roll record by any sense of the imagination. But in effect, the marimba replaces the cymbal sound on this record. There are no cymbals. The drummer, I can't remember his name, was instructed not to use cymbals. So the marimba provides that higher tenor tone required for the percussive beats, and there's a lot of percussion on this. And he bangs his throat, he bangs his sofa, he bangs his kitchen sink, to use the old analogy. But he also tears your heart out. Jockey Full of Bourbon. One of my favourites, the Black Dahlia. That triplet, or that duplet of Hang Down Your Head, followed by Time. Two of the most gorgeous songs you'll ever hear. It's a magnificent record. And the Aussies nailed it. Now this next first press is from 1971, so it's not an 80s first press. And you can immediately see the difference in the quality of the sleeve. You've got that Aussie thin cardboard, completely susceptible to ring wear and folds. It is what it is. But the Doors' LA Woman on the Blue Electra label, which is what you require for the Aussie first press, is an odd record. I mean, they lost Jim Morrison during the mixing of the record. They lost their producer halfway through the record. He left, citing the fact that he thought the record was basically cocktail music. Whilst I don't think it's cocktail music, it's certainly not great music to my ears. But it did generate some hits for the Doors that had been sorely lacking for them for a while, the likes of Love Her Madly, Riders on the Storm. But obviously, over the years, the title track has become a bit of a phenomenon. There's the Aussie first press with the Doors' LA Woman. Jim Morrison's Swan Song. So there you go. 3 Aussie presses that I think stand up to scrutiny. These next couple of records, actually, I'm gonna focus on this one. This was the one I thought has to be the lead-off record, because Albert King's Born Under a Bad Sign is often cited as the greatest blues record ever made. And I think the contemporaneous review in the Rolling Stone when it was released said as much. You know, I think it was 1971, the Stax label, Born Under a Bad Sign, Crosscut Saw, what a song that is, The Hunter, as the years go passing by. The story of Albert King was one of kind of underachievement, really, until he joined the Stax label and started to play with Booker T and the MGs. And in the late 60s, he started to record some of the greatest blues singles that were ever cut in the history of music. Then Stax compiled them for this record. So this amazing record is a compilation of the songs that Albert King recorded with Booker T during that really amazing period for him. And that single tone, that struck guitar tone that he has, was absolutely ripped off, left, right and centre in the late 60s, particularly by blues musicians from the UK. And I'm staring at you in particular, Eric Clapton. Absolutely ripped off Albert King, left, right and centre. So the thing about Born Under a Bad Sign, amazing record compilation. This record, years gone by, also on the Stax label, and both of these are Japanese presses. That was really Albert King's first proper record by Stax, as in recorded as in its own moment, and produced by the drummer from Booker T and the MGs. That relationship persisted, and it's wonderful. I think it's just as good as Born Under a Bad Sign. Anyway, there's a pair of some of the greatest blues records ever made, and they're in beautiful nick. I have one more blues record. You hear me going on about Fenton Robinson all the time. I'm the world's biggest Fenton Robinson fan. The mellow blues genius, as is described on this, which is a seriously rare record. This is a compilation of the best of Fenton Robinson, which it really is a compilation of best songs from 3 albums that he did on the Alligator label in the 70s. Somebody Loaned Me a Dime probably being the absolute standout. And this compilation, for my money, is right up there with Born Under a Bad Sign. Is the greatest blues compilation ever. It is that good. Absolutely phenomenal record. I love it, if it's not clear. I'm going to have to shoot through these next few a bit quicker. Actually, some of the ones toward the end are more just kind of great copies of great records that I forgot to kind of put in front of you all. But I'm going to kind of showcase a couple more, though. I really, really like this record. The Man with the Sad Face by Stanley Turrentine. And that is a white label promo. Never been sold on Discogs before. Pretty rare record. On the Fantasy label. Idris Muhammad on drums. Cornell Dupree and Eric Gale sharing guitar duties alongside the man himself. I can't quite take the obi off for you, but you can see there. Rather odd sleeve, but there he is on the back. Yeah, a really kind of unheralded record that I think deserves its place in someone's collection out there who'll love it more than me. Now, before I go into a bunch of Japanese staples that I think are just tremendous records and tremendous sound quality, I'm going to call out one other thing that I don't know how. I've got this is a double on my shelf that I discovered yesterday or today, in fact, and it's this. It's a really odd, horrible, terrible sleeve, but let me tell you about this. This is a triple album celebrating the Pixies' Doolittle. So inside it has a heavy audiophile vinyl copy of the demos of the songs that led up to the record. And then here, in this, where you get a little bit more of a sense of how this works, you have a John Peel session and various other live sessions and B-sides. And then here, this, you have an utterly amazing sounding and fabulous remaster of Doolittle itself, which stands alongside any independent or kind of, I don't know, alt-rock record of the 80s, in my opinion. It's wonderful. I don't think, well, the Pixies were great, but I don't think, arguably, this is their best ever record. It's accessible, weird, odd, brilliant. And this is a pretty special package, albeit, what were they thinking? Anyway. All right, so here we have 6 or 7. Well, this one, yeah, that one I'm going to pop up toward the top, because I don't get this very often at all. This is the Japanese first press of Exodus, Bob Marley and the Wailers. What can be said about Exodus? Or this, to be honest. This is Rubber Soul, the famed 1976. The reason I know it immediately it's the 1976 run is that all the Beatles records for that 1976 run had this Union Jack with the Fab Four imprinted, and all the numbers, all the records were numbered. So this is the Beatles 6. So Rubber Soul, you know, some people would argue this is their best ever record, and who am I to dispute that? Wow. This next performer, it's between this and True Colours, but I think it's this. She's So Unusual by the rather delightful Cyndi Lauper. The Japanese first press, and this one is still in the shrink wrap. So it's pretty perfect. What can you say? Some of the greatest singles of all time. Money Changes Everything. Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Time After Time. She Bop. It's great. And like all of these, I'm telling you them because they sound utterly wonderful, as does this. Let's Dance, David Bowie. The Japanese pressing of this is a revelation. And it is at least 10 times now. At least 10 times I've heard people say, oh yeah, I wasn't sure I wanted to swap out my Aussie copy of The Police, but I'm really glad I did. The Japanese copies of Police records absolutely annihilate the Aussie versions. Sorry about the 3 records up front. I know, but it's true. And then this, one of my, I guess, alongside Harry Nilsson and Nancy Sinatra and others, guilty pleasures, I'm going to call them. One of my guilty pleasures is the band Heart. Now this record, Dog and Butterfly, is a shocker of a title. Shocker of a sleeve. Everything is wrong with this, except the music. It's a hard cardboard gatefold, as is the way. There they are. Look at that. I think this record's great, and it's got all the bits and pieces in here. I'm just going to sleeve them out. I haven't taken them out for a while. There you go. There's the inner. Lovely, Nick. Great guitar grooves. Kind of a bit underappreciated. I think a little bit like Years Gone By Albert Collins. It has its fans, and those fans love it to pieces, and I'm one of them. So there you go. It's a lovely sleeve too. Lovely label. Now, what an odd delectation for you all tonight and tomorrow and Wednesday. As always, join me at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. There'll be a few surprises in the list that maybe haven't made the video. As always, if you like this, please subscribe. Leave me a message, give me some feedback. Hope you found it interesting. Have a delightful week.